Santa.
Hello and welcome to Pervasive Media Studio. It's so lovely and busy today. It's really great to see you all. So yeah, we're all here for the lunchtime talk today. These talks happen every Friday at 1 o'clock, both here in the building and live online. So whether you're in Bristol or far away, you can join the conversation. My name is Victoria Tillotson. I lead Watershed's talent development programs, one of which is our winter residency program that actually supported the project that you're going to hear about today, which is quite exciting for us. I'm a white woman with brown hair wearing a black t-shirt and what is a fabulous yellow skirt, just if you want to have a look at that one. Every Friday we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for hot desking, where we offer you the chance to spend time in the space working alongside our residents and staff between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. An especially big welcome to those of us who are new to the studio, for whom this may be the first time you're engaging with us. Is there anybody here that hasn't been before? Yes, a few people, hooray! It's great, welcome. It's lovely to see you today. So what is the Pervasive Media Studio? So we're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology with everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. It's a partnership between Watershed, University of the West of England and the University of Bristol. We offer studio space, offering desk space, meeting rooms, events and opportunities to our residents as part of a spirit of kind of generosity and mutual exchange. We're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas, so real early stage stuff, and to make time for collaboration. So a quick bit of housekeeping before we kick into the talk. So feel free to move around, make a cup of tea, grab a glass of water from the kitchen, which is just over there. And we have a quiet space just to the left here for anyone who needs to take a break at any point. Fire exits at either end of the studio over there, and one of the studio team will direct you to them should we need to use them. Accessible toilets and baby change can be found in the corridor just over there next to the kitchen. There's a Q&A at the end of the talk. So for those of you watching online, just pop your questions in the YouTube chat. And if you're in the building, if you just raise your hand. And we have got a mic, which means that the people at home can hear you. So if you just wait for that to come before you start talking, that's great. You can get news on our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at PM Studio UK on Twitter, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. Now, after all that, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers for today. So please welcome Ella Good and Nicki Kent, who are going to share the process of creating their Martian House, which is currently installed in Bristol, just across the water over there in Watershed Square, which is really exciting. Over to you. Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So my name's Nikki and this is Ella. And like Victoria said, we're artists and we've made the Martian House that is right next to Watershed right now. So actually today we're going to be talking about what's happening inside the house at the moment, but we'll just start with overall, building a Martian House is a public artwork and an experiment in co-design. And it is a real working prototype of a Martian house built here on Earth right now.
And so, yeah, so the process, which we're not going to talk too much about, there's quite a lot of like backstory to the project, but like Nikki said, we're mostly just going to focus on what's happening now. But very briefly, this has been a really long project to make. We've worked on it for 7 years. And the co-design element of it is how it came to be. So in order to make the designs, we worked with a lot of different people. We worked with families, retirees, school children, alongside specialists like engineers, architects, some space scientists from the university. And we spent a lot of time running workshops and asking people the same kinds of questions about how do you live well here on Earth, and how you might live well in a different environment, in a really isolated, unknown kind of environment. And from all of those workshops, we made our designs, so they incorporate everybody's ideas. And that's the house that we've built on the harbour side.
Yeah, and so when the house was built, it was built as an empty shell, because we felt like the conversation didn't end there, that we wanted it to be open, and we wanted it to be not this final finished example, but a place for more experiments to happen and more ideas to be put inside. And so that's what we've been doing over the last few months, is working with people here in Bristol to make some ideas about how might you actually live in this house.
Yeah, so broadly, it's about looking at how future resourceful communities might work. And yeah, briefly, so why look at Mars at all is a question people often ask us. So Mars it's an interesting place to look at. It's what you would call a resource scarce environment, so there isn't much there. There aren't the resources there that we're used to here on Earth. Everything isn't available just easily and quickly. It's completely different from our lives here today. A delivery would take 7 months to get there. It's a place where if something broke, you would have to fix it. You would have to know how to fix it. So actually, you would have to have quite simple technology. It's a place where everything's kind of shrunk down and made more visible. You would have to live carefully within a circular economy. And in that way, it's a lens for how we live on Earth. It reduces the parameters of your day-to-day life. And that's what we've been doing, looking through the lens of Mars to look at Earth.
And then we thought it's really important to talk about why ask people in Bristol to help us build a Martian house. So when we looked at lots of examples of space design and houses being built around the world to look at living on other planets. And we saw that really all of the questions people were looking at were about living well. How could you live well? And actually that's something that we can all have an opinion on, so we can all be experts on. And then also, we believe the future isn't just for experts to decide. It's something that we should all be part of that conversation in together. And we think the future is often shown as these big apocalyptic scenarios that are happening to us that we can't take part in changing. And we thought it was important to make something that counteracts that involves us actually building things. And then we wanted to make an optimistic vision of the future to show that the future isn't only for billionaires to decide for us, and it shouldn't be this technocratic vision. It should be something that we can all take part in.
So that's very briefly how we got to the point where we built this Martian house. And then, yeah, we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about what's happening with it now. So this is a picture of a brilliant group of volunteers in Bristol that we're calling our interiors team. And they all responded to a call out that we put out a few months ago to come and help us design objects to go inside of the Martian house, to fill it with ideas and inventions about future living and how a future resourceful community might live. And we had loads of applications. It was really exciting. We chose a group of around 28, 29 people, and this is most of them. And they're all really different. So we had people apply who are engineers and who are architects, but then we also had people apply who just wrote about how they were making vegetables out of hair dye.
Hair dye out of vegetables?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
the other way around. That would be really chemically full.
Yeah. So people who are, you know, just like consider themselves makers in some way, but, you know, it didn't have to be in like a really specialised category to join the project. People just experimenting with things, trying new things out in their everyday lives.
And so, we met this group and we meet them every single Saturday across 10 weeks. So that we thought it was really important to meet people across a long period of time so people could really get into their ideas. They can make one thing and then maybe make something completely different at the end. Or for some people who take longer to think about ideas, they could spend 8 weeks just joining us and then make something at the end. So to really allow for lots of different types of making and ways of making to happen as well. So right now, we're about the halfway point, and that's why we thought it'd be really nice to show some of the work in progress that's happening.
Yeah. So, yeah, that process of making, so that's what we do as artists, really. That's the kind of work that we make, where we kind of facilitate people to bring their ideas to life. That's what really the whole process of making the house has been about. It's been this co-design process, and it's working in a similar way now with the people who are coming and making things. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, should we talk a little bit more about like what the workshops have been like?
Yeah. So actually, the workshops have been quite open. We've not really have set plans and tasks to do. We did in our first couple of sessions to get people thinking, but beyond that, a lot of it is just sharing what people have been making. And we've also invited along some of the specialists that we've worked with on the wider project. So Professor Lucy Bertu, who works for University of Bristol as a spacecraft systems engineer, came to one of our sessions, and she could answer any questions about what would you actually be taking on your rocket with you, and what were the parameters of materials that might bleed into the environment in your Martian house, so what can't you use, and those technical questions.
Yes, yeah, and we had another specialist along from the university who we've worked with, Bob Myhill, who worked on the NASA InSight lander, which I think is still on Mars at the moment. Yeah, it was a few years ago, and he's a seismologist measuring Mars quakes, so he knows a lot about geology, and he's been talking to us about like what might you make Martian paints out of, like what materials are there that you could use from the environment to make things out of.
He's really good for talking about the conditions of Mars, like what the weather would be like, and he knows stuff about the pressure and what might happen if you just step out onto the surface and things like that. So they're quite a good pair to have, because one talking about the machines that you're taking with you, and the other talking about the environment that you're going to.
Yes, like there's loads of interesting facts we've learned from them, like on Mars the sunsets are blue. Yeah.
And if you were on the equator in the middle of summer, it would be about 20 degrees. So we can all imagine what that temperature might feel like.
Yes. Yeah, so the idea has kind of been like, the group is like, it's as if they're the Martian community inhabiting this house. So it's like, they're the first people that are living there and getting to grips with, well, what is here and what could we make and what might we need and how might we work together on the problem of being here and how might we live well here together.
Yeah, like what would it be like if they were living there? Because it is that question, who are you building this house for? So these people are building it, as if they lived in it. So bringing the things that they love or that they feel are important with them.
And then we've tried to keep it like, So obviously, like the parameters are quite set about, you know, well, what is there and what could you use? And then we also initially started off by doing a bit of work around, like how would this community function, like more kind of socially, what would it be like? And where we're looking at, you know, this optimistic kind of vision of the future, we set a few kind of, not exactly like rules, but kind of principles. And we talked about like, one of the most important things is the question that we might ask each other when we talk about our ideas is, well, how could you make it work?
That's kind of guided
like
a lot about
prompt,
how
really.
the group is working together. And we've got all of the ideas that people said in that session are on that board.
A while ago.
And so that idea of how could we make it work has really guided how people interact with each other, meaning that people have found it okay to say they don't have the skills, like some people don't know how to sew and other people have a sewing machine and are really up for doing that. So that exchange has happened in the group through that idea of how can we make this work together as a group.
Yeah, and so the house that we've designed, so that the wider concept design is that this is one house of many. So there's lots of these little pods, like in a big circular wheel around a bigger communal kind of village hall type living space. So it is the idea that if you were in a community of like 100 people or so, what skills do you have in that group? And one person can't do everything. So similarly to the group, you know, like somebody might have an idea, but actually, yeah, it needs somebody to be able to sew to make it happen. That's kind of how you might imagine it would work, you know, like everybody in their own little pods would have their own skills and specialisms, and you would swap things, or you know, you could help each other basically.
Yeah. Shall we show the board?
Yeah.
So, and then outside of sessions, we've been keeping a board. What's it called? Miro.
It's a Miro board, which we'd never used before.
But I think lots of people use this type of thing now because of working remotely. So you can see how it's really big now. We started vast it's become, and it really encompasses everything, much beyond anything we're actually going to have time to make. Ella, if you zoom out, there's like, it goes into every area: sharing economy, meditation, and mending. And then even further, we get to here work, play, waste, hygiene, and even more basic human rights, everything.
It's a new area over here. Yes. Yeah, so it's really like, I mean, it's a big project. It's essentially like thinking through all of the objects you use in your everyday life and thinking about the necessity of them and thinking about the life of them, like how do you replace things when they break, and then also thinking about like the functionality of things that you use, but also the aesthetics, and that being an integral part of the functionality. If you're in a place where you don't have very much, you don't have very many things, the small things that you do have, you want them to be very useful in every way, practically, but also, you know, aesthetically, emotionally, you want them to be useful in every single way.
Yeah, so you get a little sense of how people also talk to each other in between our groups, and we've got another section on the other side that is just...
Oh look, someone started, we didn't start that. They've started a WhatsApp group.
Without our knowledge.
Yeah.
I did say I hate being put in WhatsApp groups.
That's fine. Yeah.
Then, yeah, we've also put up a bit old materials that we've found in the Martian House that are going free for people to use in their projects. And then people have added to that materials they happen to have at home that they think someone might be able to use.
Yeah, so it's like you can kind of respond in a few ways. You can think about like, one, like the scenario of Mars, like what is actually there? Can you make something out of what is actually there? you can think about the scenario of what's on the rocket. Can you make things out of what's on the rocket? But then, because we are here on Earth, you can also think about, well, what do I have around me in my everyday life that I could make something out of to go in the house? So it's both, really. You can respond on.
How can we represent what we don't have? A rocket, we don't have billions of dollars, so it's about working here as resourcefully as we can, because actually we don't have a massive budget because the project's not got massive amounts of funding. So in that way, it's really nice how a lot of the people in the group have been using what they can find or very, low cost things to help make their ideas happen.
Yes. We'll go back to the slides. So
we go through some of
there's a few. How do I leave here? So we thought, we'll just look at very briefly. Just a little look at a few of the projects that people have been making. So really, it's like a series of design experiments, I guess, like prototypes. It's prototype objects, and some people might get further along by the end of the next 4 or 5 weeks, to make something quite big. Like somebody's talking about making a kind of bicycle wheel that you pedal, and it will blow wind on your face, and it might power something as well. So there's some quite big ideas that might actually be made.
And that would be also a way of exercising in a really small
so it combines a lot of things.
So it would be a bicycle that you could fit with any chair you have, so that you can exercise anywhere in your tiny house.
Yes.
And then also bringing in this idea of experience and missing the wind blowing over your face. So that's quite
that's quite a large idea.
Yeah.
But it might be made, or it might be made as a prototype of that as an idea.
She is a bicycle mechanic.
Yeah.
And she told us she has 20 old bikes in her house.
So she might get there. That's an exciting one. So this somebody was working on is, it's a sanitary towel that they knitted, and then they were using this moss. It's a particular type of moss. Which this was a picture that of the research she'd done. I can't remember what era she said.
I think in the World War.
Yeah, that was
in one of the World Wars, they used this kind of moss as in sanitary products.
Yes.
And she talks about,
or even as a wound dressing. Or something.
Yeah, maybe that's it. This one, and she talked about its antiseptic quality, and also. Being able to really, obviously, it can go right back into nature again because it's just moss and wool.
Yeah.
So that's what she's looking at. Yeah.
So that's one. These are some paintbrushes made with human hair. So again, in a really resource limited environment, everything is a resource and nothing could be wasted. You could think of all kind of waste products, including human bodily waste, as resources.
There's also conversation what will the mattress be in our house?
Yeah.
And someone said maybe that would be human hair.
Yeah.
You'd need to use a lot and we don't have time, but thinking about how that's a big resource as well.
Yeah. Or paintbrushes that could be from plants. That could be grown in the house or on another part of Mars. So there's a hydroponics research area in the house, which Katie Connor is running. So there are some plants being grown in the house. It's quite interesting, I think, with these as well to think about just how it informs what the patterns and things would look like. It just changes what that might be. It opens it up in a different way, and you might not have very much paint, so it might become more about the textures or the patterns that you use rather than just the colour, or just painting a whole wall one colour.
And then we've been looking at bioluminescent mushrooms and algae, and thinking about how might you light your bedroom, what might you make your night light from if you didn't want to use a lot of power as an option. So we've started growing some of the mushrooms. They're actually hidden in the house.
Yeah, they're hidden away in the dark. No one knows they're there.
And we've got some of the algae here with us.
Where did it go?
I put it over there.
Okay.
And maybe at the end we're going to try.
Yeah, we might try turning the lights off and see if it works.
Not sure if it'll get dark in here,
Yeah.
dark enough in here.
Yeah.
But we'll try that.
But yeah, this seemed like quite a nice idea. So there's quite a lot of examples of people making like lampshades out of. I think the algae is used quite a lot. These bioluminescent algae. So it's it's no power. There's no input. There's no electrical power from us going in. Yeah, it could be a nice idea to include in the house. It's almost like having a pet or something, almost, It's like just a little living corner. You would have quite a different relationship to it than to just putting on a little nightlight. What else?
This was someone's making their own playing cards, because they said if they were somewhere with a pack of playing cards, they would never be bored. If they're with other people, there's always games they can play. So they wanted to make their own. So they've been making their own paper to start, and they've made it a couple of ways, and they were starting just with recycling paper here, and then thinking about, okay, on Mars, what might you make that paper out of? We were talking about bamboo as being something maybe you could grow and use for paper. And I guess things like that are quite open. It's like there's lots of different versions of what would that, would you take one bit of paper with you and then use that again and again? So they've started making that, and they're designing a Martian card game for us.
Yeah, it's also nice, that one, to think about. It's like the multifunctionality of things. So, if you only had one pack of cards, how many different games could you play with it? I mean, you can play a lot of different games with just an ordinary pack of cards anyway, but they were talking about, as well as like playing cards, you might have other games kind of into it, like it might have like Uno or something in it as well. So, really like making the most out of like one thing.
And also this shows like thinking about the fun things and what do you do with your free time, and rather than it just be about surviving and everyone, thinking about the bare necessities, that those that we need to survive in, like we need to have fun, those are important things as well. So including that into our house.
Yes. Yeah, actually this one is on a similar vein to that. So someone's been making their own guitar. This is a Martian guitar that they made. They went with the approach of just making it entirely out of scrap materials that they had. And they've made this Martian guitar. They stained the neck of it with turmeric the other day, and it came out really nicely. He's looking at adding the strings next in the tuning.
Yeah, he was talking about maybe the strings was the one bit he couldn't say was something from, recycled from material found on the ship. So he was saying that would maybe be his luxury item from Earth, just the strings, and he would build the rest. And you can't see here, he's made the speaker for this out of an old coffee pot. So he's really just recycling here on Earth right now to make his item. And he's all about, obviously, about adding music to the house and that for him being really important for his well-being.
Yes. Yeah, it's that there's this question that people asked quite a lot in the workshops when we were doing the design process, which is what do people do all day on Mars? And really the question is like, well, what do people do on Earth all day? It's the same question. So on Mars, you might sit and play your guitar in the evening.
Yeah, and when this is in the house, people will be able to pick it up and play it and have a go on his Martian guitar.
This is a quilt that somebody is making. So the pictures are, the pattern's going to be inspired by, there's all these really high quality images of Mars nowadays, of all these like old craters and old, I think they're like where salts used to be, where water used to flow. So she was looking at pixelating some of those images and making a big patchwork quilt, and it would be made from like a material that might be like the parachute, like a kind of ripstop nylon material.
Yeah, so the parachute that you would use, the lander would land onto Mars with. So we use that. She would, you know, make her quilt from it.
Yeah.
And also showing passing time and what you might be doing, like making and changing things around you.
Yeah, it could be, again, like an activity that you're doing in the evening. And it's funny, like, yeah, with all of these projects, what kind of like binds them together, or, you know, in this scenario, I think the surprising thing is the kind of low-tech nature of it, that it's quite opposite to how you might immediately think of the scenario of life on Mars. I mean, in many ways, obviously, that's quite a high-tech scenario, but the day-to-day life that we've been looking at certainly has come out, it's quite a low-tech, quite slow-paced way of life. It's quite like back to basics, and actually like looking back at older ways of making things.
Especially with that idea of, if you want to go somewhere, if you want to live somewhere, you want to be able to adapt where you live and change it to make it your own, and that's really important. And so if you don't have very much, those things actually would be quite low tech, because it's about what can you do with what's around you. And also if you don't want to be using a lot of power on these types of things.
And if you don't want to be, you know, you're living very carefully within a closed loop system, and you can't be putting things into that system that wouldn't work, that wouldn't biodegrade. So if you just can't, it removes a lot of that, and you have to just work with what you've got. This one is a chair that we put in the house the other day. So this is the guy that made it, and then that's just my daughter. She was sitting in it because it's like a swing. And so again, it's the idea of using the material from the parachute. So he just had this material at home, and the lines on it, you know, they could be like the parachute lines. I think he does kite surfing, so they're really, really strong. They're the lines from that. And it's just a really simple chair, but it just immediately felt like it was such a great addition to the house, because there wasn't really anywhere to sit, and now suddenly there is. And just that tiny addition, it really like sets the scene and just makes you feel so much more like at home, I guess. Yeah.
And then these are the results from, we started when we opened house earlier this summer, we started with some workshops for families in the summer holidays, working with an artist called Anirita Chandola, who is a textiles and fashion artist. And we were looking at, if you were trying to change things in your bedroom, how might you do that with creating dyes from things that are around you, things maybe scraps from your food, like onion peels and turmeric and berries, and just how you might use that to change your bedroom. And these are going to be made into the bed sheets that will go in our bedroom. Some of them are like, we did some stuff with like flower pressing, where we asked people to bring flowers, but you could maybe grow them in your hydroponics. And then we had lots of hammers and children hammering them into the fabrics to leave prints. And then this is a bundle dyeing technique, where you kind of roll the flowers and then they're steamed.
Yeah, and it makes like a symmetrical. Yeah, that's the end of the slides, I think.
And I think that's...
Yeah. Maybe
we have questions?
Yeah, we'll have some questions.
And then we see if the algae works.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Should we
Or should we do it now? Oh, no, we do the questions and then
Yeah.
we'll turn all the
Let's do
lights
the
off and
questions
see if
and
the
then-
algae lights up. Okay, yeah, great.
Does anybody have a question? I mean, I have a question. Oh,
all
there
right.
is a question. Martin has a question.
I wanted to ask if people have been building, the people who've been making stuff for the interior, have been making stuff like individual objects, or have they been trying to like put together a coherent set of stuff that all works together and all fits together nicely, or it's more of like everyone's going off and doing their own weird bicycle contraption?
There is some
Yeah, that's a good
connection.
question.
So, sometimes it's like there is maybe going to be this area that that will be about meditation, that a few people might feed into, talking about wanting some sounds from earth to be part of that. That is a few people working together.
Yeah, so there is there is definitely collaboration happening, between some of the people, some of the projects. But I guess we've kind of approached it as well, it's a mix, like people are kind of making on their own at home and then coming to the Saturday sessions and like showing bits of what they've made. And then other people might give them some feedback or say, oh, actually, I'm making this, like they can go together. So I guess it's not an overall kind of aesthetic, like considered, but like with the parameters of it kind of being set to, it's about like what's around you, thinking resourcefully, then that kind of sets the aesthetic so that I think they'll kind of match in that way.
But also we'll see.
But also we'll see, yeah. Oh yeah, also, it might be worth saying, so in a few weeks' time, we're going to have like an open weekend on the 15th and 16th of October, because there are tours like that you can go on of the house, but they're actually all sold out at the moment. So we're having this open weekend, which will be at the end of the process, and it's just drop-in. Anyone could come in, and we should have all of the stuff that people have made by then, and some of the participants will hopefully come, so people can just chat to them about what they've made and why.
Katie, as you're here in the audience, I wondered, because Ella and Nikki have mentioned your hydroponic work, I wondered if you could just share a little bit about what hydroponics is and what you're doing there. Briefly, put you on the spot.
Yeah, sure. Well, hydroponics is working with plants, it's growing plants through, rather than with soil, it's growing them through a sort of water-based liquid medium, which is how plants are often grown in the International Space Station or other sort of remote regions like Antarctica. So the project that I've been doing, which is upstairs in the foil inflatable, is
The mic a bit closer.
Katie, could you stand up and speak out? Because people at the back is struggling to hear you.
We put her on the spot.
Totally on the spot now. Oh, technical issues, sorry.
Just for the people online, so you
Yeah.
Ah. Oh, there.
The way that I've been thinking about how to grow the plants hydroponically is not only to think about what plants we might grow as food on Mars, but to think about plants as like companion species. If we think about plants on Earth, we wouldn't be able to breathe without the atmosphere that's been created by plants. So it's to think about plants as sort of embodied beings that we would be cohabiting with. So thinking about the space of the plants as also being a space that we could relax, that we could contemplate, and especially on a kind of Martian landscape, which is incredibly desolate and doesn't sustain life in like vegetation. Like that space in the Martian House would be quite a special place in terms of like linking with how linking with Earth, linking with how we think about other living beings and also that reciprocal relationship that we have with plants. And also, so some of the species that have been grown are more like herbs, so thinking about how plants benefit our well-being. And there'll be some workshops in the next few weeks at the Martian House where we're also doing kind of reflective experiential workshops around sensory engagement with plants, including a sort of Japanese-based meditation and tea ceremony. So it's really thinking about the ways that plants enhance our health and well-being, not only as food, but in other ways as well.
Thank you, Katie. Did anyone have any questions yet? We'll go to here and then here. So the people who are watching online can hear you. So it doesn't come through the speakers, but it just means that they can hear. But it is not actually not working.
Yeah.
We're good now? Okay.
No worries, thanks. So it's so fascinating on many levels, and I would really love I'd love a sort of ongoing collaboration in some way with Tiny House Community Bristol, because we're building our first tiny house settlement, and all of this stuff is coming up, how we live and the choices we make, and yeah, it's very sort of deep in the thinking and motivation of what we're doing, and yeah, it's amazing. So my question was, on Earth we are very much enabled and encouraged to be exploitative and wasteful. In a Martian context, that is not an option, that you cannot do that. And I was wondering about what you had observed in yourselves and the other participants about the psychological kind of effects of being in a scenario where you cannot be exploitative or wasteful, and what that means for our own psychology.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
I think that's a hard question.
Yeah.
I think also that kind of leads to the idea of like, what is the point of us making this house? And the point is that it is about looking at those things really closely, because actually I do think there are ways you could do it really badly and go to Mars. And the reason that we should make this is that because we're showing that actually it doesn't exist yet, so how can we make it, or how can we use it to show a way of living well? That's what that makes me think about, actually, when you're talking about it. And then by using those strict parameters, I don't really know about, I haven't really thought about those questions, I think.
Yeah, it's quite a hard question. I think maybe what we've seen like throughout the whole process, including like the design, is that the restrictions make people more imaginative in a way that you don't get when you approach the same problem on Earth. Because it's very hard to like restrain your thinking on Earth because it's so much bigger. But yeah, we're looking at this, it makes everything visible because it's such a small, closed environment. And when you present that scenario to people, it is like, yeah, they can be more imaginative than they might be if they were talking about resourceful living on Earth, because there is no get out. So yeah, it's like the idea of being creative, like with less. Actually, less makes you more creative. That's what I would maybe say in response to that. But I think there's a lot more like reflection, like to do on the project when it finishes. Like we're working with somebody who is doing like some participant interviews and looking at that reflexive side of things. But there's a lot of that. Like, we'd like to make a book about the whole project, and there's just so much stuff. There's so much like conversations and thought, and you know, like potential like essays you could write, as well as like all of the designs and all of the drawings and all of the things people are making. It would be nice to collect it and look at some of those questions in more depth. We might have some answers, like, you know, maybe in a year's time or something. Yeah.
It's a very hopeful reflection that you know, the less we have and the more restrictions, the more creativity we generate, and what comes from within. So kind of hopeful.
Yeah, then it has to come from you. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it.
Okay, should we go to the next question?
Sure, yeah, thanks very much. It's a really interesting project. I especially like over the last 10 weeks where you invited people to bring like more meaning to the house and what it means to like live as a human. I think is really fascinating over these 10 weeks. For instance, things like decoration or replicating experiences which you wouldn't have on Mars. I was just interested to know whether you had any plans or thoughts, or at the start you mentioned the project was a lens to look back on how we live on Earth. And interested to know what your kind of thoughts and plans of that are in terms of what insight you'll get from the project and what that might teach us about how we're living today on planet Earth, and how you plan to kind of conclude and summarise the learnings.
Yeah.
I guess there's some very big, you know, things that we're putting out there for people to take with them, and for people to think themselves, like that being the artwork. For us, rather than to collate answers, to put out these statements, even just thinking, you know, if your delivery took 7 months to get to you, then would you think about what you really need and what you want, and how can you use what you have around you already, being a kind of, it's definitely made me reflect in my life about what my expectations is about what I get new and how I use that. And so I guess for me it's the concept of that going out beyond to other people would be in that way. I don't know, Ella, if you have a more
I guess
specific
it's hard to think about that. Like it's such a big project, and it is about, like, to date, it's kind of been about opening up a conversation, you know, like rather than pinning down the answers, I suppose. But as we conclude it, it would be good to do some more like drawing together, like maybe this book idea.
I think it's almost like lots of these objects are almost those continuing those conversations, what do you use? How do you power things in a lot more detail?
Yeah,
than
it's like each
kind
object is like a kind of case study and point, I guess, like of that question.
Yeah.
So maybe, like for us, maybe it's more about, it's just about it's documenting and presenting those case studies in question, and the people's own reflections on them, and getting those, you know, that out there.
And I guess this is a difference than if we were scientists making the same project, because when we started our design process, we did a workshop at the University of Bristol, supported by Brigstow Institute, and it had loads of academics there, and there was a psychologist there. She was a psychologist of like people who live in submarines, and she kept being like, well, how are you going to collate things, and how are you going to show that you are showing the best versions of things? But actually this isn't the same way as those people work, because it's not about us showing the best, it's about us, you know, creating those conversations in the wider public and beyond. So and that's the difference between it being like a fixed exhibit, I guess, and this is, it's more like, it's a provocation, it's conversation starter, it's a place, it's like a real physical place that makes you think about these things and then really make things in response to that. But yeah, you know, the project's not finished, so yeah, there's more work of
like drawing some of those things together and presenting. I mean, there's going to be like a mini kind of documentary about it for a start. And then beyond.
Is there any questions online? No, not yet. Any more questions in the room? Just one at the back there. Can you pass the mic back so people can hear you?
Thanks. You've shown a lot of great stuff, and this isn't actually specifically about the house, but I'm super curious, and I can't help it, about the blue sunset. Do you know any more about that? Like, why does the sun set blue?
Okay, yeah. Why does
and
it?
does it cast, like, you know when the sun sets in this country, in this world, sorry, and you get like orange, like light glowing on the walls and stuff like that. Like, do you actually get like blue rays of sunshine coming through? Like, how would that affect the sun catcher? And I don't know, in my
It's a great question.
You could make something about that and you could put it in the house.
Yeah, I don't know. We might not have the answer. We're not the Mars scientists. Is it to do with that there's no atmosphere?
I don't know whether it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we could ask the Mars scientists. And
Yeah, we could
post
ask
it.
Bob.
Yeah, we could put it on the social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We haven't got that much time left. I mean, I've got one kind of final question, which is around, like, what do you want to do with this next? Like, where's it going when it finishes in Shed Square? How do you see the project, like, moving forward in the future?
Yes, good question.
Yeah.
Yes. So the top floor of the house, like the gold inflatable, that part packs down really easily, which is what it's designed to do. It's designed to be lightweight, easy to transport, like put it up quite quickly. So that part is tourable, and we would like to put that in. It could go to a science museum, could go to an art gallery, could go indoors, outdoors, can go in lots of different places. And we're still looking at lots of options for that. So if anyone has any ideas or you work anywhere that would be interested in having it, just get in touch.
And then the lower floor,
Yeah.
we want it to be reused for projects here in Bristol, and there's loads of resource there. There's solar panels, there's electrics, there's a great, really amazing toilet.
There's 2 fitted out shipping containers.
And we actually don't know what those projects are. So if people have them, like, we've started conversations, but if people have projects that could really do with this material,
Yeah.
like, we'd love it to be reused in Bristol.
Yeah, to start, new places, new projects. It's a resource, really, yeah, and it's kind of available. Yeah, that's it for Beyond, I think.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Should we say
tiny house
one more
project
thing?
over?
Yeah. Should we say the final thing about the patches?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So no one asked, how is this project funded, which actually normally lots of people ask.
Yeah.
We mostly have worked unpaid for this whole time that we've worked on this project. And we had a little bit of funding from a design trust, and then everything else has been donated. So everything in that lower floor was actually donated to us. And so we still have massive holes in our budget, and we, ages ago, managed to get these little patches, and they're on our website. So if people do want to support the project, go to our website and buy a patch, because we'd love to sell them.
I've got one here.
What's the web address?
Oh,
It's buildingmartianhouse.com. They're quite nice. They're like,
Building a Martian
they're like
house.com.
little NASA patches.
Yeah.
Buildingmartianhouse.com.
Please
Yeah.
buy a patch. Help them out.
yeah, I think that's it. We might, shall we
Wonderful.
turn the
Oh,
lights
should we
off?
turn the lights off and see if the algae works?
No time.
I was going to say,
Or put the blind
I'm not
down.
sure how that will translate online. What do you think, Luke? I don't know whether the camera will handle it.
Well, it's probably tricky to do with this many people in the space, so we could do it for anyone who wants to stick around.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
let's do
We'll
it.
be trying
So
it.
we'll wrap up the talk,
Okay.
and then we'll do some experiments with the
Great.
was it moss? Like
It's algae.
Neither of those things.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Please join me in giving them a massive hand. Okay, so If you want to stick around Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, then please come and find one of the studio team. Can you put your hands up, please? Me as well. Who'd be happy to help you. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you for being here today. We'll see you all, same time, same place next week. Thank you so much for coming.